Hey, welcome everybody. I'm really happy that Chris is here tonight, and so thank you for making the time to come and join us here. Today we want to talk about shooting. Chris is a very experienced skill coach, and he has also had a career in college and also with the Harlem Globetrotters, where I think you had to shoot a lot from crazy spots on the court. Yeah, so my first question is, what is your experience with shooting? What are the things that you emphasize when you work with your players?
Okay, thank you for having me for sure. I think the basics of like the main things I focus on when I first get a player is their consistency. So what they're doing the same every time, I think is very important. I think building your shot, you have to build it with consistency first. If you're doing different shots every time, you get a bad rhythm. So I just teach the kids to find a rhythm first, and then we start working on foot placement, hand placement, and stuff like that, which I know you know and you've talked to me about, but it's different for everybody. And it's gonna look different and feel different for everybody, but finding your hand placement and your foot placement and stuff is very important when you first start off with your shot.
Right. Yeah, that you just made a really important point, because that's also what I found out, that actually no player has the same shot as another player, and we'll get into more detail soon. But as we just said, you will probably have had some problems, or have identified also some problems that a lot of your players have when you talk with them about shooting.
Yeah, I think one of the consistent things that we have is the legs, and we've talked about this before. If you're how deep you need to be into your shot, or how high up you need to be. I think that's kind of something where I've had challenges with myself, just trying to teach different kids, because you never really know until you see them shoot and you see what's more comfortable for them, what shooting position is best for them. So I think just that, I guess that explosion into your shot is probably one of those things where you have to gauge it by person, and that's what helps you out as you're teaching them.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So you just mentioned the height. How low you go, or if you're rather a player who stands high, has a high stance, that's also one thing of differentiation, right?
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you've recognized?
As far as shooting, I think one of the other main things I've focused on is hand placement, and I know this is it's a small thing, but everybody's hands are different, like you said, and there's some people who just like to hold the basketball different when they first start playing, and you have to move their hands. Most people don't like their hands moved. They like to touch the ball where they touch it and they shoot it. So that's been a very difficult thing for me to get kids to go from here to here, for instance, because a lot of people just want to have the basketball in their hands and feel comfortable instead of it feeling just like a good shot. So hand placement's been another thing, and there's many things, but hand placement and that loading position have been probably my top two things of maybe not difficult, but just having the most difficulty adjusting people to.
Yes. Yeah, for sure, because everybody has to find the way to how to shoot the ball straight, right? And depending on how you hold the ball, and also I think players have different hand size, so that plays a role too.
Exactly.
And so as you said, there are a lot of things, and what we said for tonight is that I wanted to explain the things also to our audience, and also a little bit to you. We've spoken about it, but it's like a little bit of a test drive, because I'm really interested in your opinion, and especially your questions on the concept that I have run for a couple of years now. So I would just go straight into it. And whenever you find something that is not clear, or you have a question, please interrupt. Okay. So I think you will probably have some of the questions too that our audience has. Yeah. So as I said, I have developed a concept which is based on the fact that not every player has a different shot. So if I had to mention only one thing, I would say the first thing everybody has to recognize is exactly this. So every player has a different shot, every individual has a different shot, but then it goes even further. I have been working together with a sports technician for a while. He's a good friend of mine, so we have discussed many nights about shooting, and once he mentioned to me that you can never stand up twice the same way from a chair. And I found that very interesting.
That's very interesting. I never heard
Because
that before.
if you just go down to all your little muscles that have to work together and have to be coordinated to get a movement going, then you basically have a sort of basic pattern that you have to do to, in this case, to stand up from a chair.
Okay.
But what really happens will always be a little bit different, because maybe your starting position is different, maybe you're tired and you use other muscles, or so it's always a little bit different. And so although before we talked about it, I already knew that every individual has a different shot. I found it very interesting that actually every single shot is, if you go to the very smallest detail, is actually different.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense, because that's the difficult thing is always to make the transfer from teaching the technique and then go into the game situation.
Yes,
because in the game, when you move, things are always different. And sometimes you get the ball too low, too high, or whatever. So actually every single shot is different. So yeah, that would be my my first message to every coach or also every player, just to acknowledge that and then start working from there. Yeah.
So what would you say to a kid that comes in the gym to train with you and says, but I just want to shoot like Steph Curry. I want my shot to look like his.
I think I would let him try if this really works for him, find out how it feels, and then give him some other suggestions. Try to do it like this, or do it like this, and then I think after a while, usually players stay with what feels right for them, and of course it's also effective. But I think my biggest problem as a young coach was that I was always searching for the one way how to do it. Yeah, I thought there must be one true way, and so when I picked up different things and I tested it for myself, and then I kind of put up my concept. But it's just important to understand that not the things that work for me may not work for you.
Exactly.
And I think this is also a really huge misconception that a lot of coaches, and me too at the beginning, fall for, that you think because it feels right for you, or it has worked for you, especially when you have played on a really high level and it worked for you, it might not work exactly the same way for your player. Yeah.
Very good point. Yeah.
But that's a really good question. Yeah? How because kids see a lot on YouTube these days. I have had kids, especially in the lockdown, who had never really played before, but they had taught themselves the game just from watching YouTube and watching the instruction videos. Which is in one way a great thing. On the other hand, sometimes they see things that might not be for their level or might not be good for them. Yeah. So my intention also is by getting public with this, with my findings. That there's maybe more understanding, that you can see, okay, this coach teaches this, and this is great, and there's always some truth in it, but it might not work exactly the same thing. Might not work exactly for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good point. Very good point.
So, coming from there, the first thing I was trying to find is what are the basic concepts that a shot has to have to be successful. Because obviously, yes, you can shoot somehow, yeah, and it might feel good, but you also have to test for efficiency. And just from the physical point of view, it's obvious that a very flat ball, for instance, will have problems coming in, or a ball that flies a curve all the time will have more problems flying in. So there are just some things from physics that you have to consider. Yeah.
So if I was coming into the gym, I'm a newer shooter, I think one of my first questions would be, what is something consistent with every good shooter you've ever trained? Like what's the consistency? Obviously they're gonna have different shots in different forms, but what's one of those things you said every shooter I've trained, or a majority of the shooters I've trained, have had this quality or that quality?
Yes, that's a good question. I have developed 3 keys that I think if you follow this and you just figure out how you do it, you will find eventually your way how to do it. So the first thing I would say to him, you have to find your individual way how to shoot the ball straight. Because it just has a much higher chance to go in, and it's a lot easier to determine to shoot a little bit higher or a little bit more forward than if you always have a right or a left in your shot. Yeah. So you already mentioned the hand placement. So I think it starts from there, that no matter how you hold the ball in the first place, in the end when you bring the ball up and you touch the ball, the last touch of the ball basically has to be in the middle of the ball and a little bit from underneath the ball. So that would, I think, be the first thing I would practice with a player. The other thing obviously is, and so sometimes with the younger kids you have to start, I think, maybe more from how to gain the power. Especially if a younger player wants to shoot at a high rim, if you're lucky you have a rim that you can put down, but no matter how strong the player is, I think it's very important to learn how the muscle coordination to get the right amount of power or force to get the ball to where you want to have it. With the one thing in mind, and that is that you don't want to use a lot of power from your arms.
I feel the same way, and as I've taught kids, I think that's the first thing I try to take out of shots is the consistent power with arms, just overuse of the arms and stuff like that. I think that would be the thing consistent that I've taught pretty much everybody that I've shot is less power from the arms, more lower body. Even if you're, like you said, the levels don't really matter. It just can't be all your force coming from up top. So I think that's a really good point.
I found that quite often when kids start shooting threes, that's when they start using their arms a lot, because sometimes I have players, they are one step in front of the 3-point line and they shoot consistent and have a really good follow through and everything, and then you tell them, okay, now step back behind the 3-point line, and it's like a psychological barrier that they think, okay, now it's a 3-point shooter, I have to do something different. And so what I've learned from especially 2 shooting coaches that I have followed is, and also tried it myself, what works really best is if you start from a free throw. Because if you have a consistent free throw, you just have to add the jump and a little bit more power than when you want to shoot the 3, and then you have a pretty consistent 3-point shot. So I think this is a very important thing to get the psychological barrier out of the players' minds and show them that they have enough power to shoot from there, and it feels, and your arms feel the same like a free throw. That's
a great point, and that's actually how I got started shooting. I built my consistency at the free throw line, and I've just been able to kind of move that shot back. Like you said, it's been the same shot, and the consistency is really built up close. I think a lot of people need to know that too. Like, you don't build your consistency from behind the arc. You build it from up close at free throw line, like you said.
I think it does not hurt if you try to shoot some threes in between.
Of course.
Because I mean, you hear sometimes pro players, they say, okay, at my first years I only shot very close to the basket, and I understand that this is a way to get there.
Yeah.
But I think it's I have heard about a research. Unfortunately, I have lost the link to it. But I have heard about the research that it's also important to train your eyes on recognizing distance early. That's like a part of coordination.
Okay.
So I don't mind if my players, even if they don't have figured out yet how to gain the right amount of power, I don't mind if they take some threes, but I always take them back to the free throw line. So I think it's always about balance.
Okay.
Yeah. And I also find it difficult to tell like under 14 players not to shoot a three-pointer at all, because then your spacing will be a problem in the game. So at the same time you have to teach them the right spacing.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think it doesn't matter if it's a young player. Also, like my very good players, older players, I always take them back to the free throw line to start with, and then we go from there.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a good point. Very good point.
That's great that you have made the same
improvements.
experience.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, just from my personal experience, working my way out, I had a funky shot. I had a push shot when I was younger, so I pushed it from like down here, and my shooting coach had me bring it up level to level to level to the point where it was finally up here.
Yeah.
I'm shooting from there. He was very big on me not shooting threes. I was very young when I started, so he was big on me not going past the free throw line until I came in the gym, and the first thing I did was shoot the right way, and shoot the right way, and shoot the right way, and then we start taking inches and inches back to the point where we're shooting threes, and it's the same exact shot. So I think it's big time, and I think it is very important, like you said, to make sure that a kid or a shooter knows the distance is still, because you're going to have to shoot it from everywhere.
Yes.
So knowing that distance is very important.
Yes, and it's also about. I think this is a great approach to go gradually back, like you said. And I think there are also just times in the year where you can do more of that, or really say, okay, now for the next 3 weeks I don't shoot a three, I just focus on my consistency from the free throw line. I like
and that goes into actually getting the work in outside of practices and stuff like that, because obviously he was telling me like that for when we train, but when we practice and stuff, he was like, hey, if your coach tells you to shoot a three, shoot a three. Right. You better shoot it the right way. But when you're with me, we'll stay in close. So I think it's important, just like you said, they have to know that range, especially the older kids, because when they get to practices and games, they're going to have to shoot them, whether they're ready for them or not. Technically, and that's what you're building. You're trying to build them up to be ready. Yeah.
And the nice thing, what I also found with this is that it gives the free throw more value to the players.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody wants to have the three-point shot, and it looks great, and then the free throw is something that a lot of players, I don't think, take enough time to shoot free throws. And so I think if you give them this idea, and then also the free throw becomes more valuable.
Yes. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Good. So we're talking about the first two keys. Yeah. The first one is how to shoot the ball straight. Find your individual way. We don't have the time tonight to go into a lot of detail, but I think that what's really important, like you said, the hand placement is different for players, so it's usually not practical to be right there. Yeah? It doesn't work in the game. So even a player that has very close elbows will have a slight side grip. They may be very tiny, but some players prefer more of a side grip. But in the end, the thing that I think matters is that you find your way to build your straight line up to your release point, so that in the end, it doesn't matter from where the ball comes, you make sure that you have the last touch at the at the right, at the center.
Okay.
Yeah. And but then I also try to challenge the players. Like at first we try to just work on the technique. There is one drill that I like to do. You can do it without a basket. I call it the boomerang drill, because you throw the ball away like a boomerang.
It comes back to you.
And it comes back. You don't really shoot it. I go down now because I think we will be outside of the camera frame. Yeah. So I will do it from here. So what you basically do is you just go here. You take the ball up to here and then take it back like this, and you can try to it from your index finger, and then from index and middle, and also from the middle, because that is also, I think, a differentiation. That you sometimes you hear coaches talking about the index finger. Some coaches prefer this, or also players talking about that. And I think first of all it depends on how your bones are built. What works for you. I used to teach a lot of index finger, and then a player came up, and I always told them, look, if you hold your arms like this, then your index finger is one line with your arm, and makes sense. And then at a camp, a player came to me and said, hey coach, this is not with me. My index finger is pointing to the left, and for me it's the middle finger. And that made me aware of the fact that that there's also that differentiation. And now, as we said before, that even every single shot an individual takes is different, and as we said, the game situation is always different. I think it's good if you challenge. Well, once somebody has good form, has a basic understanding of the form. I also like to challenge players, for instance, with balance drills, like one leg stuff, and so then you don't have it in perfect position, and you still have to shoot it straight. So and it can happen in the game that you're like this, and you would usually prefer to use your middle finger, but in this case, if I'm like this and I have to shoot, the balance is on my index finger. So you cannot always, maybe with a free throw, but for everything else, when you move in the game, you cannot always determine which finger it is. You can have a preference, but in the end, you have to get the feeling for the ball, the touch, of course.
And I've noticed, you were talking about balance. I've noticed some kids that I've trained, they seem to like shooting off balance more. And how would your attack point be if a shooter they're more comfortable shooting off balance, but their shot is not as straight as you want it to be or as consistent? What would be your first attack point for that?
I think at first I would watch the basic stance that they have, and I would try to figure out where their preference is from gaining the power to get the ball there. Because I think sometimes it comes from compensating movements, like you. While you come up, you realize, okay, I don't have enough power, and then you try to push it somehow, and then that gets you off balance. So I think it's definitely you need to find a good base to start from, but I think it's a little bit more than that, because if you have a great base but you cannot generate enough up force from there, then you might have to change it a little bit. Because, like as we said, for some players it doesn't work if you tell them to go lower. They don't feel the power there.
And they actually go shorter sometimes.
Exactly. They may need more of a bounce.
Very good.
So what I found is that on a high level, you can say that the biggest differentiation is if a player prefers to gain their momentum coming off the ground. So these would be the players who like to play low and come from there. And whereas some other players can generate more up force when they catch the ball in the air. Like a hop shooters on a hop. Exactly. Yeah. So they would catch the ball in the air and then bounce. And some of them are a little bit lower in the air, and others are actually pretty high because they can generate a lot of power out from their angles. So that's when you talk about how they generate power, that's usually the first thing I'm looking for in a player. The only thing that is difficult in there, especially with the youngsters, is that if a player is tired, then it might be different at this point. Yeah. So that when somebody's tired, he will probably use some other muscles. So it's nothing that you can really figure out in half an hour. At least rarely. Sometimes you can, but I always also ask the player, how do you feel? You tired? You have any knee issues or whatever? Because when the player is not completely in shape and is tired, it may vary. So it's if you have the chance to work with a player for a longer period of time, then it will show. And so my approach is, like you asked me about somebody who wants to shoot like Steph Curry. I usually give them just all the ways that you can use to gain the momentum. So from my research, it's you have players that, as I said, have a high stance and they use their angles a lot. So they would jump in pretty high and come out like this, really explosive. Then you have some players who are closer to the ground but still catch it in the air, so they will come more from their thighs. And then you have the two options how you can gain momentum coming off the floor. So either you're just going low, you come up here from your thighs, or some players they are not. They have their knees their nose over their knees, so like this position, and so they can gain a lot of momentum by extending their hips when they come up. So I think when you watch or when you look after these 4 ways how players can generate momentum, and you just let them practice those 4, and then usually they'll find that one thing does not work at all. So you can cross it out. And then you just start working from there.
You spoke about the consistency, and like it obviously matters how many times a week you see a kid. Say you only see a kid once a week, and that's the only time you get an hour with them for a week. What would you think the most important focuses should be in that hour? Because they're going to be able to build bad habits all throughout the week when they're not seeing you. So what would be what you want stuck in their brain when they leave you for that hour?
I think, again, these 2 things, plus my third key where I come to closely. The first thing is they can, without really understanding what they are doing technically, they can always see where the ball touches the basket. So if I want a player to practice to shoot straight, I tell them just practice not to touch the side rim, left or right. And if you do so, and it doesn't matter if the ball goes in or not, if you do so, the next shot you want to take, for instance, you touch the left part of the rim from the position where you took the shot from, then you just tell yourself, okay, I have to shoot right. And either you swish it right away, or sometimes you hit first the left, then you say, okay, I shoot right, and then you hit the right. But then after that, you have the exact feeling where the middle is. And then you can get out of the habit. So I just teach them a little shooting game they can do with themselves, that you just count your straight shots, no matter if it goes in or not. Or you can say, okay, a make is 2 and a miss is 1 or something like this. But the most important thing is the makes are not so important. It's more that you want consistently don't want to touch the left or right part of the ring.
I think that's really big what you just said too about makes not being as important early. How do you stress that to a youngster? Because I know for them, me personally, I've said it to kids plenty of times, and you can see it on their face. Like you say, the makes don't matter so much right now. We're working on consistency, and they look just like, no, the makes matter. What would you say to a kid that is only focused on makes?
That's actually my third key. Okay. My third key is that the players have to understand that in order to become a great shooter, they have to have more misses overall than anybody else. Yeah. Because they take so many shots to get this consistency that on their way they will have more misses, but they will still be better than other players who don't put this effort in. Yeah, and also what players, young players understand is that your brain cannot learn without the mistakes. So because then you don't have any reference. Yeah. So once you made that mistake that you shot left and you can correct it, then you can learn from it. But for instance, if you can shoot just one step away from the ring, and you do that, and you're consistent, and you never challenge yourself to go further back, then in the end you stop learning. You just do the thing that you always do. So in the end, I feel that our job as a coach is always to challenge the player. And then if the player picks up the challenge, he understands that there will be mistakes. You cannot learn without mistakes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's a very good point.
So it's like appreciating or honoring the misses, that they can teach you something.
I think we've talked about that too, just those hard times in anything. We talk about basketball, those hard times are going to get you to that point you want to get to. So I think that's a very good point.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, and actually the other thing that players understand is that when I tell them that when you have stress, like you're getting upset, then your brain shuts down some parts of the brain, because if you're really in this fight or flight mode, I tell them the only thing that you have to do then is either run away with all you have, or you would, if you go into a fight, you would maybe try to hit somebody. Yeah. But in both cases, you don't need the fine skills, the fine tune that you need for shooting. So that's also actually the reason why you just cannot shoot when you get upset. When you're stressed, it's very hard to make shots. Yeah. And I think with this combination, and for them to understand, okay, coach says that I have to have those misses to learn, and that this is a key. I have made the experience that most players really understand it and can work with it, except if you have somebody who has already this habit of always getting upset. If they're very focused on their makes, they come to you, it's very, very hard to get them out of this.
Yeah. I've noticed that too. That's a very good point.
Yeah. But this little shooting drill that really works. Yeah. And I also use this approach when because you were asking what if this player is coming only once a week or even only once a month. Yeah. And I always focus on making the players feel how it should be, and then tell them that they have to always get back into this feeling. Like you mentioned rhythm. You said you want to bring your player into this rhythm. So I tell them it's like I show them the key to it, and they can feel it, but then they lose the key again. So the next time they are on the court on their own, their job is to find the key again. And the more often you find the key, then the more consistent you become, because it's easier for you to get in your rhythm.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think even a pro player is still doing this. That's why all the NBA players come so early to get their shots up before the game, because they all have to get back into the rhythm and basically always find the key. They just have developed the ability to find it a lot quicker than
absolutely.
A beginner.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point for any kid to know that's watching, or any athlete that's trying to be a pro. Even the pros go through this. I think that's big for anybody who's shooting to know. just to help with that confidence, help with that frustration level. Like you said, the NBA guys have to get there 2 hours, 3 hours early to build it up. So just imagine guys who aren't getting as many shots as them, how many hours you need to build it up. So
Yes.
you just got to focus on stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it's a good point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, so basically, if my players understand the three keys, find your individual way to how to shoot the ball straight, then find your way where is your preference, how you can gain the up force that you need to get the ball to the basket without using your arms too much. Like you said, you just want to take the power out of the arm, or at least not having too much. And yeah, if they can figure it out, if they understand to shoot free throws consistently, and then can come back and just compare the how easily they shot the free throws and compare it to the 3-point shot, and then find doing the same thing there. Yeah, it's really interesting. And something that what I do is I tell them that the first 3-point shot they take after shooting a lot of free throws, the first 3-point shot, I tell them just shoot a free throw and allow yourself to shoot an air ball. And I think when we talked, you said the same.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. There's certain times where, and the kids, they don't like it obviously when you tell them that, but you need the air ball to see it. Like you need to see the distance, you need to see if it's straight or not.
Yes.
I think it's a very good point. Yes.
Right. And I think the fascinating thing is that if they understand this and they allow themselves to shoot the air ball and they don't force, because usually when players want to go to the ring and they are not allowed to jump, of course they need this extra power from their arms. But if they understand it and they just imagine they shoot a free throw and do the same thing, then they see how much distance were they lacking to get there. And then if you add the jump, that's usually all you need.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And so the little difference is then only the jump.
Okay.
And this helped my players a lot to get off this barrier. Yeah. And then as the third key, the how you deal with your misses, and I think that's important. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Wow.
Thank you for your questions.
Of course.
I enjoyed the session a lot, and I think we will do that again, because obviously there's a lot more detail, a lot more drills that maybe our audience is interested in.
Of course.
Yeah, but coaches and players, if you understand this one thing, that every individual has a different shot, and every single shot of an individual is different, and you just work on these three keys and find your individual way, I think you have already made a huge step. Yeah.
Good.
So yeah, thanks again,
No problem.
and lots of swishes for you.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
No problem.
That was good.
I was thinking too.